there was a declaration from the new CEO of FTX about why FTX has found itself in dire straits. Now, this is known as the first day declaration. It lays out how a company gets into hot water and seeks bankruptcy protection. And in this first day declaration, there are a ton of crazy revelations from the man who presided over the Enron bankruptcy. And this man who presided over the Enron bankruptcy says that never in his 40 years of legal and restructuring experience has he seen something so crazy. I have, quote, never seen such a complete failure of corporate controls and such a complete absence of trustworthy financial information, end quote, as he has seen in digging through the wreckage of FTX. Pretty crazy stuff here, really spicy 30-page document. There's also a subsequent document that has some other revelations, but we're going to focus in on this first one for now. George, I'm tossing it to you for your immediate thoughts.
Yeah. First off, some people go through this life perfectly cast into their roles, complete with the name to top it off, right? I don't know if they call John J. Ray III, JJ Ray III, but they definitely should. If we made a movie about a bankrupt company and the guy that would come in like the wolf to fix things with 40 years of restructuring, it would almost always be this dude called JJ Ray III. So here are the things that I latched onto. One, I swear the entire financial system is held up by shoddy Excel files. Two, I can't believe this is worse than Enron. And man, this really feels like a crypto company just got sent off to military school because JJ Ray III is the antithesis of FTX. And he brought the army with him, man. Alvarez and Marsal, big law firms, the feds and Chainalysis. And also, guys, we're not going to bring it up, I don't think, on this show, but the org chart, which is just the organizational structure of all these shell companies that were put together, is a complete mess. Is only reason you have to have that many shell companies is when you're doing something shady, and turns out they were doing something shady. So before I get too worked up, Zach, anything to add on there?
I just want to talk about the big companies. He put them into 4 silos. The new CEO put these things into 4 broad silos and broke down the finances of each. There's some pretty crazy stuff in here, including credible evidence that Alameda Research, which was the trading arm that was fueling a lot of the activity on FTX, had sort of a God mode button that prevented it from being liquidated on FTX.com, which is pretty crazy that the deck was rigged to that extent for Alameda Trading, and yet still they found themselves in such a massive hole that it led to the commingling of customer funds and those handled by the crypto hedge fund. That's just one of several things in this document. I really encourage viewers to go check it out in its entirety. There's a ton of great reporting on it right now, but it is a fantastic document that lays out the facts and figures as far as it is currently known by the current CEO of FTX. Pretty crazy stuff. Jen, I got to get your opinion on this before we go back to George.
Yeah, so John J. Ray III cited poor record keeping, lack of experience among senior managers, as well as the use of company funds to purchase real estate in the Bahamas. Like you said, Zach, he says this is the worst case he's seen in all of his experience. And this coming from the guy that handled the Enron bankruptcy proceedings. That is so damning and shocking, especially when we think about this pedestal that SBF was on just months ago. He really was the face of the industry, out here mingling with regulators, allegedly doing the right thing by consumers and the rest of the industry. And for me, not even when I was just reading the story, for me, unpacking the events of the last 2 weeks, I've really been thinking about, public perception and what's actually happening at a company, and how, PR and marketing can be used for such bad, and to lie to stakeholders, to consumers, to retailers. And it seems like that happens a lot in this industry, which is so horrible because we are built on the foundation of transparency. And so, we've been talking a lot about how this kind of proves the use case for DeFi. I think it also proves the use case for DAOs a little bit, having anyone to be able to go and look into how a company is spending its money, where that money is going. I know there are a lot of things to solve as we bring DeFi and DAOs to the mainstream, and this incident has probably pushed that out even more. But I think the fact that SBF could go out there and say all of these things and spend all of this money in marketing, and everyone just believed that the company was doing well, is something to reflect on. But George, I'll kick it back to you.
Yeah, honestly, DAOs with all their craziness in their discords, yeah, it would be better than these 3 people or however many people were involved in the scam or the fraud. We would have been better somehow. I can't believe a Discord full of bots would have been better than what we have here.
Can you believe it? And, this is right. The world we're living in.
And you were talking a little bit about PR as well. And Zach over here mentioned Alameda and God mode with Alameda. A lot of the perception on kind of the depths of crypto Twitter was that FTX was showing its entire order book to Alameda. So Alameda it's like they're playing poker and they could see everyone's hands and they still lost, which doesn't make any sense to me. Like they could have made, and they did make, a ton of money until they started doing all this other stuff, off balance sheet stuff. And that's, yes, part of it is a PR problem because they probably should have nipped that in the bud, but they couldn't nip that in the bud because they actually were cheating and they were still losing. Like, what is this? I don't even know, man. Sorry, that's not really a point, but.
I mean, it's a valid point. I mean, if I've been thinking recently about an interview at Consensus this year with then FTX US President Brett Harrison, who seemed to have left before things got really bad. But he was saying that, the point indeed of partnering with MLB and doing Super Bowl commercials and putting your name closely tied to established brands and institutions was to suggest that those brands and institutions had done their due diligence and found FTX to be a credible, legit actor within the space. And for all those brands and institutions and people who are now, Larry David, Steph Curry, Tom Brady included, being sued by angry investors, for this to come to light, they really have egg on their face. And I really feel for them because I think that a lot of this stuff was so hidden in the depths and the bowels of this organization that even senior leadership, as indicated in this declaration, was likely unaware of what was going on and the depth of this rot that had permeated FTX and Alameda. So it is a bit of an embarrassment. And I do wonder, what is the obligation of journalists in this instance? What is the obligation of, upstanding, marketing professionals in this space? What's the level of do your own research that is reasonable to assume is possible? This doesn't discount or, offer a blanket excuse for not surfacing these things earlier. But it is really fascinating that ultimately the story was brought to light by hard-nosed reporting, as we mentioned before, by Ian Allison, surfacing a leaked balance sheet that showed these irregularities and these creative accounting techniques that suggested that where there's smoke, there might be fire. And what we see now in this declaration is that there was significant fire in the house of Sam Bankman-Fried, and it is really, really remarkable to see this come to light. Those are my thoughts. There's all sorts of crazy angles. There's intrigue, international intrigue as to where this will ultimately be heard. There's a lot of suggestions in this document that the new CEO distrusts the government officials in the Bahamas and distrusts SBF's ties and connections to those officials. It's going to be really interesting. I think observers of this case who are closely watching will see ultimately where it gets arbitrated, whether it lands in Delaware or whether it stays in Bahamas. That seems to be probably the next interesting nugget that may develop out of these revelations. Lots of crazy stuff, so much crazy stuff. There's always something more.